Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Storytime with Kate Mazaris. Did you know that October is Squirrel Awareness Month? More so to notice how squirrels are part of our ecosystem. But I have a story that I'm going to read to you now that will remind you of how squirrels can also be in our lives in other ways than just what they do for nature. So I hope you enjoy this blog called The Squirrel and the $100 Walnut. Many years ago, I was actively preparing for a Christmas open house to which I invited my yoga students, friends, and neighbors. Peppermint candles gleamed on the mantel. The lights on the tree cast blue, green, red, and yellow shadows on the wall. Bing Crosby crooned Silent Night on the stereo while I busily set food on the dining room table. The guests were expected any moment, and after a long day of preparation, everything was finally ready. When I went into the kitchen to wash my hands, I noticed that the sink wouldn't drain properly. The disposal was working, but the right side kept filling up with mucky, hummus-soaked water. Try as I might with a plunger, then a bottle of bleach, then a spoonful of Drano, nothing worked. Finally, I just gave up, realizing I'd have to call the plumber the following Monday. It was Saturday night, and I wasn't thrilled about the idea of having stinky, stagnant water in the kitchen for the rest of the weekend. But what else could I do but light another scented candle and throw a towel over the mess? The open house went off without a hitch, and hours later, after everyone had gone home, I got on my hands and knees to wash the dishes in the bathtub. I counted my blessings and was grateful that the clogged sink wasn't in my one and only bathroom. I was thankful, too, that no one noticed the plethora of dishes that had stacked up on my teeny tiny counters. I gently waved off offers to help me clean up because honestly, who wants to bend over a porcelain bathtub in their best clothes? Still, I wasn't at all thankful about the prospect of having to spend more money during a season of high gas bills, Christmas gift giving, and an unknown yoga schedule looming around the corner. In the end, I reminded myself of the time years earlier when my finances were even tighter and the sewer line backed up right before the holidays. Back then, I had prayed for a miracle while the fellows from Roto-Rooter toiled in the basement, and I was instantly answered when a $58 reimbursement check for a dental cleaning arrived in the mail. Of course, the bill was exactly $58 as well, and from then on, I learned I would always have enough money to cover whatever I might need. But this time around, what if I needed to replace the whole sink or pipe system? I spent an anxious 48 hours wondering and worrying until I could call Mike bright and early on Monday morning. Mike's been my plumber since I bought the house, and he's been a godsend during times of leaky faucets, broken disposals, and faucets that needed imminent replacing. I'm not sure how you're going to fix this one, I said, explaining the situation. Mike got right to work, and sure enough, after an hour, could not figure out the problem. Everything looks good here, he said. The trap's empty, the pipes are fine. Well, now what? I asked. I'll go downstairs and take the drain pipe apart to see if there's something going on, Mike replied, gathering his tools. 20 minutes later, I heard him laughing. Kate, you're not going to believe this. What? I asked, heading downstairs where Mike stood behind the washing machine with a small brown object in his hands. I found the problem, he said. This walnut was shoved into the drain pipe. My eyes widened. How in the world did that get in there? Mike went outside for a moment and took one look at the roof, then said to me, I'll bet a squirrel got up on the roof and shoved it down the pipe. What for? I asked, aghast. Aren't squirrels supposed to bury their nuts? I don't know. Maybe he thought he was putting it into safekeeping for winter. I knew exactly which squirrel Mike was talking about. The ornery one who had begged me all summer long for food. The one I had given the odd apple core, the handful of strawberries, the peanut butter covered celery. Sometimes he was so brazen I thought he might come into the house to plead for a morsel. So I often chased him out of the yard before my cat could escape and give him a run for his money. I could just picture that squirrel up on the roof the previous Saturday night while I was getting ready for the party. He was probably rubbing his little paws together, chuckling to himself. I've been saving this big ass walnut for a long time, and now I'm going to show Kate exactly what I can do with it. As Mike packed up his gear, he handed me that stupid nut and the bill for $100. I'm sorry it's so much, but I had to charge you for the extra time. I totally understand, I said, pulling out my checkbook. The peace of mind in knowing it was a simple fix is worth it. That's the most expensive nut you'll ever own, he laughed. I lifted a brow. Yeah, and that squirrel better protect his the next time I see him. Mike burst out laughing. Well, that's a once in a lifetime story that you'll get some good mileage out of. Yep, I nodded. Every single Christmas, when I see a bowl of walnuts at my mom's coffee table, I'll be reminded of this moment. But it's not only during the holidays that I pull that tale out of my back pocket and share it with a friend or two. Just this past week, I was talking to a friend who was ready for some serious changes in her life. How did you feel when you quit teaching and didn't have a job? Angie asked. I was terrified, I told her, utterly and completely terrified, but I kept focusing on what I wanted, which was something very different than what I had. Yeah, but how did you do it? Financially, it was totally scary, but I always had what I needed. And then I told her the Roto-Rooter story. Angie shared some of her own life and then asked, hasn't it been hard to live like that all these years? Sure, I've been scared out of my mind more times than I can count, I replied. The worst was when I was driving home from California and the engine nearly blew up outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I kept thinking I'd have to unload all of my stuff in some strange town and buy a used car just to get me back home. But in the end, all I needed was a valve replacement and I was on my way. And truth be told, not every story has a scary element. Then I told her the story about the squirrel and the $100 walnut. Angie burst out laughing. I can totally picture that stupid squirrel up on the roof trying to figure out a way to get you. "He got me all right," I said with a tinge of sarcasm. But I took that walnut and threw it into the Ottawa River, promising myself I'd always trust that no matter what nutty thing might happen in the future, I'll always be able to deal with it. How do you do that? I heard the uncertainty in Angie's voice. I just go through it, I replied. When I was starting my business, I took it day by day. When financial challenges came along, I reminded myself that I would always be all right, and I have been. When I was driving home from California, terrified the car would explode even though it had been repaired, I took it mile by mile, minute by minute. How did those Roto-Rooter guys clear out the sewer line? They had to drill through it. Yep, that sounds right, but it's not easy. Neither is washing dishes in the bathtub, I snickered, but what can I say? You do what you have to do. Nowadays, I don't have that kind of extreme dramatic stuff going on in my life. While I may have challenges now and again, they're nothing like the ones from my past. Always, and in a variety of ways, abundance comes to me through people, through places, through surprises in the mail, and telephone calls on a quiet afternoon when the only place I want to be is listening to a friend in need and sharing a silly story that makes her feel lighter and more able to move through whatever she's experiencing. But just in case, I'll continue to make sure the squirrels in my neighborhood are well fed, because you never know what mischief and mayhem they might be plotting come December. So many of you might be in transition as well. I mean, every single person I know is contemplating significant change right now. And it all looks different, depending on who we are and where we are in our lives. But if you remember this story and remind yourself that some things that look like a disaster might not be, you'll get through it. And just in case, make sure your squirrels are well fed in your neighborhood as well. So if you liked this story, please like it and share it with a friend. And until I see you the next time, have an incredible day. Take care.